right up to the screen. This is my CD. Find out. Okay, perfect. All right then. Okay, today's class is about how to write an offer from start to finish. So I'm going to pick a property in Matrix. We're going to show you how to go from there to get it all the way from written to how you're going to send it off to your client for signing. This is an educational class. This is not a real person property. I do that for YouTube so that they don't block my content. Okay. First off, of course, you're going to be showing your client, you're going to have your consultation. You've already sent them your disclosure packet. You've already sent them your buyer broker service agreement, everything signed, and now you're starting to look at homes. You found a home based on touring. Then from there, we start with Matrix and Realist. And from here, you can pick your client. So you've done the searching and all the things. That is a different course. If you have not taken the MLS Matrix on how to search for properties, take that as well. Make sure that you stay fluent and current with whatever their trainings are. Don't bog yourself down with it when you have some free time. But we're talking about tracking. You really should be calendaring your whole day from start to finish. Wake up time, shower, lead generation, follow up, doing laundry, vacuuming the house, going to bed, like dinner and lunch, and put that all in your calendar so that you're very familiar and fluent with your calendar. It is the best way to stay organized. I track everything, whether it's eating food, talking to people, doing classes, people coming to classes. So tracking is something that is very helpful and beneficial to our lives as a whole. But for this class, I am going to pick a listing that has come back on the market. Do you guys want single family residence, or do you want condominium or vacant land? Okay, perfect. First person that answers gets the win. See if we can find something in Seattle. Let's pick West Seattle. Click on, okay, so when you're in the physical listing, it'll look like this. This is what we call the agent detail view. This is what we can see. Our clients do not see this. So this is just us and what we see. From here, we're going to look at our icons that we have on the right side of the pictures. And this one here is a piece of paper with a pen is, if I hover over the top of it, it should say transaction desk. Click on that, and it's going to start the wizard on where you're going to write your offer. So from the listing itself, it takes you straight into the transaction desk wizard. Now, what I like to do from here is label it appropriately. So I always put the last name of the client and then keep the address there. So I can go quickly through transaction desk to find things easily. You won't need templates unless you've set up templates, which you can do. It's a whole nother class in Northwest MLS that I do recommend taking because it's very valuable, and you can create things that make your life just a little bit easier so you don't have to guess on what you're getting. This is a residential sale, not a listing. It pulls all of the information from Matrix for me. Hit create. It's a 5-step wizard. So it's going to go from information to contacts to forms to documents. So here's our information page. We see that it's listed at $699,000. Now from here, I like to tab, so it takes me to every single area that I need to hit. So the compensation is going to be paid based on a percentage, not a dollar figure. So on your buyer agreement, if you have a flat fee, then you're going to want to put and change this to dollars. Everybody that I know of usually stays. Next, going to say comments, which is buyer broker comments, which the listing agent would put something in there if there was any comments. And then it should tab you over to the purchase price. So we're listed at $699. We were at $520. Here's our history of the property. It shows that it was active on 11/11 at 7:20, added in. So before, see how it says compensation here? So what they did was they had a zero compensation or request, and now they've added in compensation to reflect so that the buyer can see it, what the seller's offering. They changed their purchase price from $720 to $699 on December 1st. It went pending inspection and came back active. So based on that information, what would you like the purchase price to be, buyer? it's 75, it is.
I can earn more from it. I think I want to.
Now, don't ever say that out loud because you have to put your principal first.
Well, yeah.
I would say something like, you know what?
The market,
Obviously,
the
the
data
best
shows.
inspection, if something came up with one back to act, or maybe they just wanted to get out of it. Who knows?
Right.
So I would go low if something's not right.
That was my brain speaking out loud.
So this is a $24,000 price low offer.
Off of something that's already been dropped.
Correct. Okay. And of course, we'll do comparables if you're sitting down with your client, but for now, this is just how do you go from here to here? That's okay. So tabbing through, so it says that the seller is offering 2.5. Now it says amount to be paid by seller. This is where you put the same number that's on your buyer agreement onto this particular point here. If you leave this blank, you will not get paid. Okay. So what is the amount that you're charging your buyer for your services? 2%? I heard 2%. We're gonna go with that, which is gonna be this is gonna change the dynamics of how I'm gonna write this offer, so thank you for that.
So it says amount to be paid by seller.
Correct. That is the buyer requesting the amount for the seller to pay my broker.
Okay, so if your PPSA says 3%.
You put 3. Correct. You're asking the seller to pay more.
Even though that's what they offered, you're asking.
Correct. Correct. But Daniel's BBSA says 2, which is going to give a credit to our buyer. So it's a very interesting, I appreciate how you did this. This is why I'm not coaching it. I want to show you things based on my buyer's opinion and request. Then you hit next. So now we put in the date of the purchase agreement. When are we physically writing the agreement? We're writing it today. When do we want our offer to expire? Now remember that the offer has an automatic expiration date of 2 business days if you put nothing in this area. So you can either, and we're going to the holidays, we want to get some things done. So when do you want your expiration date to be? Haven't heard that the seller's traveling or anything like that just yet, but you want to keep that into consideration. You want it to expire today at 9 p.m.? Okay. And we do not have mutual. What would our closing date be? So we're on the 18th. We've got 2 holidays within this area. And the 18th is a Sunday. So we're going to probably want to close closer to midweek to the end of the week-ish, just to give time for loans, people vacationing, escrow, all of that. So I would recommend, buyer, you would close somewhere on the 22nd or the 26th. I don't want to get too far past the end or towards the end of the month, because it just makes it difficult for escrow to scramble. So I heard 22nd, so that's going to be our date, and that will be our possession date as well. Next, we go to adding our buyers. So I'm going to add an existing contact. We're just going to pick somebody that I had at one point. Perfect. And do we have 2 buyers or 1 buyer? 2, okay. Pick another one. I don't know if that one has an email address, so let's pick this one. Perfect. Now our contacts are added. We are automatically added. Our firm is automatically added. You will normally see Keller Williams, North Seattle, but I'm under my leg number for the Kirkland office because I've been doing a lot of work in there today for another branch. So yours would say Keller Williams, North Seattle. Okay, and then your name would be up there as the buyer broker. Now we get to pick our form. So it's a single family. When you hit the plus add icon, start typing in purchase and sale agreement. I know the numbers, but you all don't. Yes, 21. Good job, Daniel. And feel free to have a cheat sheet if you just need numbers for the quick ones. But you'll see that a bunch of them pop up here, and I still don't see 21 at the top, but I see it right here. Click the bubble, and it automatically gets added to the basket. So we're going to leave that there. Are we having financing? Yes, so we need financing. Good job, Daniel. Do we want an inspection? 35. You keep adding them in here. The one in here that you guys may not be familiar with would be the optional clause addendum. Page 1, paragraph 1 has a disclaimer in there that kind of protects us. It says we do not make representation on lot sizes or square footage. or encroachment. So I do always recommend you do put the optional clause addendum as one of your standard forms. There is.
If you put in that you're going to, I should say it this way, when you put in an opportunity.
Yes.
And you're representing the buyer.
Got it.
And then it shows you the 3 different stages. Within those stages, it tells you what's required.
Okay.
And how you
Yes, you're talking about the placeholders in an opportunity. Correct. Optional clause addendum. How old are we? We are, I think, probably old enough for lead-based paint. Nope, 96. We don't need it. The other thing you can do is you can come in here and check what the forms that the listing agent has had the seller upload to the system. FERPTA, which we don't need to put a blank one in. Legal, 22K we will talk about. 35P we're not waiving. We're not doing a pre-inspection. Form 17 is in there. Offer tips, which I think is a dumb thing to do in this market personally, but that's my personal opinion. But it is nice to see that they put in here who your escrow and title is so that you know who to contact and who to send the mutually accepted contract for escrow to immediately. So they're saying, please allow 24-hour response. So our expiration date at 9 is not going to be helpful, just so we know. If financing is being used, please provide pre-approval letter. It's not a problem. Inspection is being, if the home is being waived, please include a 35W, which is something I do highly recommend. If your buyer ever wants to not have an inspection, maybe they decided to take the seller's inspection, which I don't recommend, because buyer wasn't physically there and could see what the inspector was seeing and pointing out. Always use a 35W to cover your behind, because I don't want a buyer to come back and say, well, they recommended that I didn't have an inspection because, they thought it would be multiple offers. And the one thing I will always tell you, anytime your client says they want to waive something, follow up with an email saying, Tim, I understand that you do not want a financing contingency and you don't want an inspection contingency. Those are huge risks for you, because I know you're getting a loan, but you want to win this house. It's still a huge risk. And same with the inspection. We have no idea what the inspector saw, what he or she actually inspected. So there's a huge risk. Is this something you still want to waive in your offer? So that way that email goes out. He can't come back to me with his attorney and say, well, she told me this, because I am in the middle of a suit with that right now with another broker and one of the other firms. Happens all the time. Cover your behind, okay? FERPTA, seller's not formed, that's fine.
Sorry, Genine, sorry to beat. Yeah, this
Yes.
is Michael Kane. Sorry to beat the dead horse. The other one is because the buyer waived the inspection or finance addendum, and then later on they had cold feet and they said that that there was an issue. Or what circumstances arose from your loss or the issue that's taking place?
The buyer didn't want to have an inspection because they didn't want to pay for it. And now they found septic issues. So that's where that loss is. And they're coming back saying that their broker told them they didn't need to have one. When in fact, luckily he had text messages that simply said, I recommend you have an inspection. There's not a seller inspection even on this one. I recommend you have one. And they came back and said, we just don't want to pay for one. So that's what happened.
And the 35W, if I were to look that up, that's basically saying it's letting them know that there's a risk involved if they waive the inspection. Is that pretty much what the form says?
Well, the risk statements are in our disclosure packet. So in our disclosure package, you have the buyer advisory, which shows all of the risks of buying a home anyways. Simply just buying a home is a risk, and why you should have an inspection. So those are also in our packet, but you still need to make sure that you're not coaching the client not to have an inspection because they're in a multiple offer situation. You need to let the buyer make that decision.
Got it.
Yes, Daniel. What if that was already pre-inspected by the seller? So imagine this, you're walking into a house with an inspector after mutual acceptance. You as a buyer get to see everything the inspector has seen, because you're gonna follow that inspector around the whole house. He or she is gonna point out, I recommend that you, which is gonna be in my report, he'll say to the buyer, he or she will say to the buyer, but I recommend that this is a high priority. You need to have the seller either remedy this, fix this, replace this, or it's something you need to do when you first move in, because it's a huge hazard. Could be the furnace, could be the water heater, could be the roof, whatever. But that way the buyer's there with the inspector, hearing everything that the inspector is saying. When a seller does an inspection, the seller's either there or not even there. And if the seller's smart, the seller won't be there, quite honestly. And then, of course, if the seller has done a pre-inspection, it needs to be attached to Form 17 as part of their disclosure. Okay.
Dean,
So
one
we
more
don't-
thing.
Yeah.
Would you recommend not getting if you're the seller, not getting a pre-inspection because you don't want to know some of those faults?
100%. 100%.
Okay.
I'll never have an inspection of any of my properties. Okay, so that is,
Do you want to put insurance contingency? Especially with flood marina?
yes, we do. Thank you. And that number is
Daniel,
22VV, Victor, Victor.
you did that?
I think 100% you should have this in any buyer offer as a contingency, because it doesn't just protect on making sure flood insurance isn't too expensive, because it's not every property is in a floodplain. But if the property has ever had damage and the seller filed a claim and had it paid so that they didn't have to absorb the cost on their own, they don't have to disclose that to the buyer. It's not in Form 17. It's not a state requirement. I'm trying to physically get that changed because I think that's hugely important that they have to disclose it. But then this way it gives the buyer a chance to reach out to their insurance company, get the insurance binder. Once they apply for that, the insurance company scrubs all of the insurance companies to see if there was a clue report. I think it's with the Arizona term, but to see if anybody has filed a claim for damage from a broken dishwasher or a washer, dryer, washers upstairs, dryers upstairs, washer breaks, pull downstairs, flooded, right? So that's not because of flooding, but that would be an insurance claim. So I highly recommend you always use this form. We don't need to put in a 22K because they already have one for us. We don't need lead-based paint because the house was built in 1996. If the house was built in 1978, I recommend any seller should still do a lead-based paint form, which is 22J, just to cover their behinds, because you never know if a can from 1977 got stuck in a Ace Hardware or what have you, an Ernst or a Pay and Pack, and it got used, and you don't know, even though the house was built in 78. Okay. Any other forms that you would recommend to a buyer to let the buyer determine if they want it as a contingency? We're not on well, we're not on septic.
Well,
Title
probably
contingency,
looking up the sewer.
sewer scope, that is part of the inspection contingency. Daniel mentioned a title contingency, which is Form 22T. Most of you have no idea what that means. It does not mean that the property has to be marketable. That's already covered by the boilerplate of the purchase and sale agreement. It means that anything past the general exceptions, and if you have not taken a title class, you need to take one in the new year. It means that any of the special exceptions, if a buyer wants them removed from the title report prior to closing, i.e. CC&Rs, utility or easements, anything that is on Schedule B, they might want to do that. Now, if you're not on a large chunk of land, you're very, very commonly built flat, you don't need a title contingency. It is physically a look and walk clause in 99% of the scenarios. So I will take it out if you try to put one in on one of my listings, and I will tell the seller why. And they will agree with me, because so does my attorney, says the same thing. Okay, so that gives us our form. Now, forms are something that we're pulling through from the Northwest MLS that we are going to fill out. The next section, which is step 5, are documents. These are things that have been added to the system through supplements by the listing broker, something that you might add. As an example, you would add in this section anything that you might have pulled up. If you want to put like the inspection report in here and have it in one place, you can also put that in command. Your disclosure packets will come through documents. They will not come through forms because it's not from the Northwest MLS, even though you can grab it through templates. But then these items are also going to be part of our offer. I like to clean up this section of anything I'm not going to use. I am not going to use the seller says I can have a pre-inspection as a buyer of the property. I'm not doing that, so I'm going to take it out. I can always go back and get it. It's not deleting it from anywhere but this page. Form 17, I might need offer tips, don't care. And I just clean up my page. And then I am done creating my packet of what I need to do now. So next you go into forms and you start filling them out.
Dean, sorry to interrupt one last time. I just had an offer that came in regarding, they included a 22Y modification of closing definition for recording delays. Is that
Right.
necessary?
It could be.
Would
The
you
reason that
suggest
is
it?
that it depends. I don't really suggest it. I like to be able to move the closing date based on certain situations. 22Y versus 22Y dash recordings are two different forms. 22Y simply moves the closing date forwards or backwards. 22Y dash recording states that if we close on the closing date, but the recording numbers aren't available because they have not been received by the county, then escrow and title are saying they will consider this closed and they will insure around the fact that it's not physically recorded yet because we don't have recording numbers. There are some insurance companies that won't let the buyer insure the property even based on that particular stance by title and escrow. So I don't feel that it is something that should always be used, because there's also some other companies that we've had a 22Y dash recording and they will still say, well, we're not going to give you possession. Like, we're not going to allow it. So I think it's a dangerous form because most people don't know why it's included. I think people are including it just because we've had issues in the past with COVID and closing and recording numbers didn't get met. But when you read the boilerplate of the first sale agreement, it says that closing is based on seller has recording numbers and the funds are available to the seller. So two of those things have to be met in order to physically be closed. I think there could be lawsuits if something were to happen. If the house went up in flames on the closing date, I think that would be a huge issue with either or buyer or seller insurance company. So, and I've had houses go up in flames on the closing date. So, and of course, at that point, sellers still insured it. It became, the seller's issue and whatnot. So I think that is a huge issue by people inserting it into a contract when most people don't know why it's there. Does that help?
Yep.
Now, I am not going to go through every single paragraph on every single form. This is showing you how to write an offer from start to finish. So your homework, after it's said and done, is you need to go look at all these forms and you need to read them and you need to internalize them. Next year, I'll be going through the boilerplate of the contract in and of itself, which I've done here before, to go through every paragraph of just these 6 pages so you know exactly what these giant paragraphs mean. Every paragraph from pages 2 through 6. Describe every blank we're going to fill in here today. Now, it says that only one of our buyers got picked up. So we're going to pretend we only have one. Who is it? We'll just move them. Now, what's our status? This is helpful to escrow because this tells them how these 2 people are taking title. These will be potentially an LLC, partnership, limited partnership, a corporation, unmarried persons, married a separate estate. This is going to be, or domestic partners. Which one of these do you want them to be? Married, unmarried. You want these 2 men to be married, domestic partners. I think we can put married couple. Where are they? There they are. Married couple. Okay. Tab through so we make sure that we have everything we want. This is a location for 3 property tax ID numbers, which you don't need. Let's go back to our listing to see what appliances are included. We can't check a box for an appliance that's not physically in the house and expect the seller to put it in. So we're only going to include anything that is in the property. And they're giving us down here the dishwasher, garbage disposal, refrigerator, range, and stove. Is the washer and dryer not here? They might have. But if they're here, he lives in Houston, I'm taking it with me. I'm wanting him to keep it here. It was probably, no picture of it. So we can't verify, since we haven't physically been in the property, that they are there. So we're going to keep the stove, the refrigerator, the dishwasher. Was microwave one of ours? Nope, no microwave. And of course, I love this one, the garbage disposal. You tell me who's going to remove their garbage disposal from the property when they leave. Well, I'll tell you who will. People that are losing their homes and they want destruction in the home because the bank's taking it back, they do take items like these.
You just spend $100 at Costco.
Maybe.
Doesn't make that much noise.
I have seen a bathtub in the backyard. Granted, it was a clawfoot tub, but I've seen it. I know. There was also holes in the floor, so you couldn't go in some rooms. Earnest money. How much is our amount, buyer? How much are you willing to lose if you decide to breach the contract, buyer? 2%. What? Would you say? But I'm gonna say I would up it. We're gonna go with 13,000. And then buyer, you have X number of days. So I don't fill this in. It's 2 as a default. This is one area that does have a default. You have 2 business days to get it to escrow. Right now, we're in an area where the holiday doesn't hit till next week, so you have plenty of time to get in there. I recommend a 2 to 3 day window so you don't make the seller nervous. Because if you decide not to deposit it and try to walk, they will try to sue you for it, number one. But number two, it would make them nervous that you would want it to be later because you might have the tendency to want to walk away from it. So 2 or 3 days, buyer. 3 business days. It will be held by the closing agent. We do not have a trust account at the firm, so we cannot physically hold the money. And then forfeiture of earnest money is buyer friendly. Seller's election of remedies is seller friendly. This means that the seller can sue you and keep your earnest money. So buyer, I recommend forfeiture of earnest money. Would you agree? Perfect. The title company they gave to us, we're just going to say it's ABC at this point. And then the closing agent is going to be ABC Escrow with Sally Sue. Closing date on 1/22, possession on closing. We are going to ask that that 22K be a part of the offer. This tells the escrow company that any lienable utilities will be paid off by the seller because escrow is going to do a holdback of 1.5 to 2 times the amount that's currently owed. They will pay off the lienable utilities and then give the rest of the money back to the seller so that the buyer doesn't inherit those utility issues. About lienable utilities. I've done a lot of bankruptcy trustee sales, and let me tell you, those buyers have some high bills. It is an issue. Charges and assessments levied before but due after closing. Let's say this house was built in 2015. Okay, so it's 10 years old. More than likely, it has a sewer capacity charge. Sewer capacity charge is the exact example of it's levied today, but it's not fully due until after closing. Another example would be on a condominium. They had an HOA meeting. They found that windows were damaged, roofs were damaged. There needs to be some replacements. We're going to levy that. Was levied today, but not due until after closing. So the safest bet for your buyers, if you have no idea, is to be prepaid in full by seller at closing. Firm, new construction, $5 million home, there's probably a sewer capacity charge. This box was checked. However, when the broker went to research to see if the amount had been levied, it's TBD. So if the amount's not levied until after closing, even though this box is checked, the buyer would be responsible because there's not an amount levied yet before closing. Does that make sense to everybody? Great. And then they told us that the seller is not a foreign person for taxation purposes. Verification of information is not a look and walk clause. It is something that the buyer has to determine and prove the seller has misguided or gave misinformation. Example would be, I have a listing. It's a 4,000 square foot listing, and Daniel held it open, and he made his own flyers. And he put on there, he was looking at something else, maybe the lot size, which is, let's say, 4,700 square feet. So let's say that he put 4,700 square feet on the flyer as square footage. That would be, then the buyer researches to find out it's only a 4,000 square foot house. That would be the exact reason of verification of information. Okay, so if we do not do anything here, it automatically has an expiration date of 10 days, which are calendar days, but cannot end on weekends or holidays. So if you do forget this particular box, you're okay. But this is one of many that have defaults. So but I always recommend you always check a box. You always fill something out. As a listing agent, I've always talked to my sellers about what this means. And they have agreed that it is in their best interest to have this time period run the same amount of time as the inspection contingency. So how many days does the buyer get to verify the information? Buyer, 10 days. By the way, I'll counter with 5, just so you know. The buyer is represented by buyer broker, seller is represented by listing broker. Now we come to our compensation. Had I not filled in the box on that page that I showed you, this line would have been blank. And what? You did that. I've had many people in this office do that mistake. I talk about this until I'm blue in the face. This is a chance, if you see it blank, you get the opportunity to put it back in. Now there will be another form we're going to need to add because A is higher than B. That means that there's a 5% overage. That means that the buyer can have that applied towards their closing costs or price reduction. And if you don't do anything, then the seller gets to keep the 0.5%. So we absolutely want to make sure our buyer gets it. We are going to check this box, and then we're going to add a form, and I will show you what that is when we get to the other form. So for now, we're going to fill in our addenda line. This is an index line. If this is left blank, but everything else is attached to the contract, no harm, no foul. There are going to be stupid people out there that will tell you differently. I will tell you, you should never leave it blank just because of those reasons, because there's stupid people out there that will try to challenge you. Always fill it in. So we know that we have 22A, and then you can keep tabbing over. We know we have 22D. We know we have 35. We know we have 22K. We know we have 22VV. Oops, didn't take it. If you forget what you have in your forms, you can come up to transaction forms here and pull it down, and it tells you exactly what you have. So we have that. We were going to add another one. So right now, because that's the end of this form, we are going to have to add in this form, 41C, buyer credit. So by checking the box, addendum for buyer credit, this is the form we're going to use. Do not use a 34. Use this form. It has all of the language that you need, and it's very consistent with how we've written the contract. So here we're going to go ahead and exit out really quick. We're going to add with our plus button, our 41C buyer credit.
Mainly applies towards credit for closing or
Price reduction.
Or price reduction.
Correct.
Cannot be like cash back to buyer.
Buyer can never have cash back unless there is no loan. If there's a loan involved, a buyer can never have cash because that would be lender fraud. Okay. If a lender tries to tell you that the buyer can have cash, they are 100% wrong. And with lender fraud, because it's a federal offense, we could also go to jail or have to pay those fines as well as brokers. So make sure that you do not embark on lender fraud. Now, here we are back at our form. If we want to go to our next form, we simply come up to transaction form. Everything is being saved. I don't have to hit the save button. And you come down to your next form, which is 22A. And this is being recording for future use and for future viewing so that you guys have this available to you. Now, we have to tell the seller what type of loan we have. Do we have a conventional? Do we have more than 20%, less than 20%? Do we need a conventional second? VA, FHA, bridge loan, home equity, down payment program. What do we have, buyer? What did the lender tell us?
Home equity and home.
Conventional first and home equity. Excellent. I will tell you right now, if you have the down payment program and the down payment amount is coming strictly from that program, let's say it's a 5% down payment program and maybe FHA, then the amount that you put here is the only amount that the buyer is physically putting into the loan. So if it's just a 5% down loan and the down payment program is giving all 5%, this would be 0. So don't add extra numbers in there that the buyer doesn't have, because if they don't close and you have the wrong amount in here, buyer will be in breach. So
Just conventional, not backed by their.
correct.
And I have home equity.
Yep.
Yeah, that's the mixture.
Yeah, like if I were to go open a $500,000 HELOC on my house right now and go use it to buy a house in Arizona, I could. And that just takes $500,000 out of equity of my house when I go to sell. Okay, are we a down payment of percentage or dollar figure? Percentage, great. How much is it? Now I'm going to tell you right now, if you know they only have a specific lump sum of money that they're going to put down, if you put a percentage and the purchase price changes, that will fluctuate. So that's why if they tell you off the bat, I only have $19,000 to put down, you put it as a dollar amount so it doesn't fluctuate. Okay. What is our down payment percentage? 20%. Perfect. And we have 5 business days for mutual acceptance to apply for as many loans as we want to. Will that screw up our credit? Potentially. But this is the only period in the financing that they can make a change after mutual acceptance. The only thing they can change is the lender. And you have to notify the seller that the lender was changed? No. Which I think is dumb, but if the answer is no. If you change your loan program, your down payment amount, or type of loan, you have waived your financing. Unless you close on time, no harm, no foul. But if you can't close on time and they've caught you in the web with either a lender change on day 7 and you change from conventional to FHA without seller's written consent, they have waived their financing. Anytime that and they're also based on paragraph A, page 2 of the purchase and sale agreement on all of them. It states that buyer has sufficient funds to close. So if they need this pot of money and they see a shiny object at the dealership down the road and they use some of that, and they can't replace it before closing, they will be in breach of contract.
Janine, if you're the listing broker, is it prudent to contact the buyer's lender to find out if they're a solid buyer in their financial position and so forth?
Yes, I did that once, and the lender informed me that they had no idea that people had written on a house. They had already switched lender.
Oh.
But it doesn't, I mean, it doesn't matter. They have 5 days to pick any lender they want. And they don't have to tell you if they switch. So, I mean, should you do that? Sure. But, and you might get the answer, I have no idea that they wrote on a house. The contingency has 2 options. Option A is buyer friendly. Option B is seller friendly. Option A says that the seller has to notify me to waive my financing or satisfy my financing. Option B says based on this date, these many days, it automatically waived unless I've already sent failure to be able to get financing prior to those days. So A is buyer friendly, B is seller friendly. I always recommend that we go buyer friendly route, don't y'all? Perfect. We've got longer than a 30-day closing. So I want to have maybe 25 days. So on the 25th day at 9 p.m., seller can say, buyer, I want you to remove your financing contingency. If buyer says no, then the seller can either terminate the contract and we're done, or his money comes back to the buyer, or the seller can say, well, we're only a few days away from closing. I'm just going to look the other way for now. Okay. But once they've asked and they decided not to adhere to it, then they can't ask again. The default on appraisal is the appraisal contingency will stay in play even if the buyer waives their financing, or you can have a default of will or will not be waived. Will not is always friendly. The reason I want you to check every box is if the seller's going to counter, we're going to counter the seller, we have something to strike against, right? So if there's nothing in that box above or this box checked, it's really hard to strike through a blank and put in something else, which is essentially what you would have to do. So it's always best to have a nice, complete, clean contract. And then this is the other option. And then is the seller paying any of the buyer's closing costs? Now remember, the lender will allow only a max amount, and we might need it for inspection. We might not. So just keeping that in mind, buyer, that if we ask for your max, we can't ask for it again. And you can't get that credit from the seller, that the money goes back to the seller or the purchase price is reduced based on the fact that we have a commission under the published amount. Are we asking for closing costs? $8,000. They can always counter. And that is the end of this form, okay? Go to your next form, which is your inspection contingency. This is where we will see a sewer scope option, which is automatically a default. Buyer can have it done, which is here. Buyer's inspection may or may not include a sewer scope. Buyer's notice of inspection, 10 days or business or calendar days. I always use a 5-day window, especially when we're approaching holidays, because it usually goes past weekends and all kinds of fun things as an option. So we're currently on the 18th of the month. So if I did 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 days would end on Christmas. So then inspection would be due on December 26th. If I do 7 days, that would be Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 again, and 7 and 5 are always the same. We'll end Christmas, it goes to the 26th. So if I do 10 days, which the seller's going to counter me, that would go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Would end on Sunday, the 28th. That would go to Monday, the 29th, that I would have to give my request to the seller for repair. How many days do you want, buyer? Now, remember, we've got a closing date coming up. And if we take too long, if we take 10 days here, seller takes 3 days, we take 3 days, or we get our extra 5 days, which we'll talk about in a minute, we are running out of time to close. How many days do you want, buyer? 5. Now, you could check one of these boxes. If the seller catches or doesn't catch it, then you could deliver the report and not be in trouble. If you do ever deliver the report or sections of the report or screenshots of the report without seller's written consent, you have waived your buyer's inspection contingency. So if you ever think that you might be skirting on something, just call. So then our next option is a 5-day window. If the inspector recommends additional inspections of anything, that gives us, we can say, seller, I want my 5-day right to do that. Here's the dates that I need and time, so you'll need to be out of the house. So it's an extra 5 days. So we're not 10 days if we use all of that, just so you know. Next is 3 days is the seller's response. Seller has 3 business days to respond to us. If they do not respond to us, which they do not have to respond to us, we automatically go to our last 3 days. These last 3 days are the end of this time period. If you do not get in writing and confirmed with seller and buyer that whatever is to be done, then on the 3rd day by 9 p.m., if nothing's in writing and confirmed and agreed upon, the buyer gets nothing and has to move forward. So on the last 3rd day by 8 p.m., nothing is agreed upon by the parties. Terminate the contract with the buyer does not. And the language there is intent buyer, these periods do not keep going. Repair, seller has 3 business days prior to closing to work on all of these items. Let me show you what happens. Closing is on the 22nd of December. So that would be 21, 20, 19, but if 19, yeah, say it is, backwards. I do have this backwards. Holiday or weekend, now you start going back. You go back to the closing date. You don't skip over the weekends and holidays like you going forward. So in this time period, I always recommend 7 to 10 days because that will be perfect for that to be done. Or watch this 5 days prior to closing. Seller doesn't do it. There's no recourse the buyer has if seller doesn't do it. So anytime you're asking for the seller to do something and you need strong language because it's a big ask, call me so you can get the language you need. That says if seller doesn't do it, you'll terminate the earnest money gets refunded. Your next form is going to be 22D. This one's super simple. Checking a bunch of boxes. We always check box 1 because it protects our behind that we don't represent any square footage, lot size, or encroachments. Don't ever check standard ownership. That downgrades your client's policy. You rarely will need extended, and that's always a question for the title officer. We do want the seller to clean the property. This means broom swept. Buyer, you are not going to have it professionally done. It could be that when they move the couch and there's a darker spot or lighter spot because of sun or feet, they don't have to worry about it. So just know that going into it, anytime you have carpet and you can't see underneath the item, just know your carpet's probably a different color. It also doesn't mean that they don't have to clean it professionally. So if you want it cleaned professionally, put language in and exactly who's supposed to do it and when it is to be done. Personal property, this is a double-edged sword. This could be paint cans, even though it says unless agreed, seller shall remove all personal items. Well, they don't want to remove it because then it becomes the property of the buyer. So that means all of these paint cans, widgets, and shims in the garage, though they're personal property, if they're left behind, that means the buyer inherits it. So that's a double-edged sword on what that means. But if they want to leave a vintage Mercedes in the garage and they forget to take it, then it does become personal property of the buyer. Diamond rings have been found before, just so you know. We believe that these items, which the seller is going to confirm for us, are part of and connected to the property. It's not new construction. Don't check the lease box because the boilerplate of the contract says that any leased items, the seller has to automatically pay off at closing or prior to. This says the seller can negotiate with you on who's going to pay it off, inherit it, or whatnot. So I don't like box 7 personally. This is not in an association where there's a homeowner, so we don't need to check that box. There's no title, no transfer of title. Excluded items. This might be something a seller will fill out to exclude the chandelier in the living room, the tagged in pink ribbon prize plants in the front and backyard. Usually we won't fill that in, but the seller might. And does the buyer want a home warranty? And if so, who's going to pay for it? Who is the company? And how much is the amount? 22 VV is our homeowner's insurance. This one has a lot of defaults. I recommend you follow the default. So this one says, and they've got a lot of language. So I do recommend if you're going to leave anything blank, these might be some of the blank areas. Half of 1% if not filled in. So that would be a 0.5, not to exceed $2,000 for deductible. And then if you need additional, we talked about flood insurance. There's a box you can check here. Landslide because of flooding and rain, maybe on one of the islands, higher bank. Earthquake coverage, which is very hard to get in Washington since we haven't had our big one. And if there's any other kind of insurance coverage that might need to be filled in, you've got those options as well. And then it gives you all of the time periods which you have to get them from the title or from your insurance binder. Our last one is our buyer credits. And it will be a credit to the buyer. And if it cannot be applied to the closing cost, then we want a price reduction. Otherwise, your option is seller can keep it. Multiple offer situation, that might be the case. Or the fact that you forgot to check applied towards reduction. So if neither is checked, it automatically goes back to the seller, so pay attention to that. Now, these forms are forms that would be a wonderful thing for you guys to read over the holidays because you're gonna have time on your hands, I'm sure. Add it into your calendar as a time blocker as well. So our forms are done. Now we're going into Authentisign and we're gonna grab both our forms and our documents. So from this page, click the top bubble, it selects them all, hit the basket, hit the pen, and it starts to go and move into Authentisign, which is our electronic signing application. And from there, we're going to add in the documents, the 22K, the 22E, those items into that as well. Now we have to add our participants, which are our buyers, add some transactions. We need, who our buyers are. Top one, thank you. We're not going to actually add him because I'd have to give him an email address. So we'll pretend he's there. This one, perfect. Select. There, and it gives us then all of the forms. Will show all of the signing blocks for our client. If a 22J is in here, you as a buyer broker also have to sign it. So those all have signing blocks. That's great. Now we add the rest of the documents. From here, we go to add documents. And these are checked, meaning they're already here. We don't need E because E is already signed by the seller. It's not part of the contract. It's a disclosure. We need to make sure upon mutual acceptance that escrow gets a copy of 22E. We don't check that box. We do check our legal description, our 22K. And then you have a decision with your buyer. Buyer, I've already sent you Form 17. Do you want to sign it now or do we want to make the seller deliver it to us? If so, we don't add it in and we leave it on the side. Yes, by time, because until they deliver it, buyer has an out. Once it's delivered, buyer has 3 days to look and walk. Okay, so I'm not going to include it. Buyer already has a copy. Seller doesn't know buyer has a copy. Once the seller knows the buyer has a copy, as an example, I call the listing agent, hey, Tim, my buyer has a question on Form 17, page 2, da-da-da-da. Tim's like, oh, crap, they already have Form 17. I haven't delivered it. Why don't you email that to me? And I will email to the seller to answer that question. Now Tim has knowledge that the buyer does have a copy of it. And if it's prior to mutual acceptance, that could hurt the buyer because now your time periods are done. So don't ever email the listing agent on questions about Form 17 until you absolutely have to. And rarely you will have to, just so you know.
Janine, if Form 17 is in the supplement, does that constitute the buyer receiving it?
Obviously, you haven't watched my videos, Michael, because I've already answered that multiple times. No, it does not. It has to physically be delivered from seller to buyer via listing broker, buyer broker.
I was just testing you. Thanks.
Thanks.
Is that-
Okay, so here's all of our forms. We've got the legal and the 22K, which are not complete yet. Plus, I want the 22K to go higher because I like things in like alphabetical numerical order. You can physically move things around in these areas. Okay, I like legal at the bottom. So then we scroll down to what's not signed. Oh, there's one. So notice that 22K, because it was filled out by the seller, we don't have the date of the pre-sale agreement and we don't have the date, or we don't have the buyer's name. So we're going to go to tools and we're going to add the full name of our buyer by click and drag, and auto date, click and drag. Now, if I didn't click and hold and drag, this is what happens. Auto date, click it. Oh, it ended up here in the middle. Simply just move it up. These bottom markups are click once, let go, and then click where you want it to go. As an example, a text box. Click it once, click up here, and add what you want. And then you can make it transparent so you can see the lines. You can also move it around. So another thing you could do during the holiday break is you could do a spread. They've got a little bit more intuitive where it finally added the signing block, even though it's a document. And then they should have added one here because we had that. Our inspection is here. Our legal will not be complete. We've got the seller's initials. Now we want ours. I physically like the full signature because it is a legal description, but it doesn't have to be. And that is how you go from start to finish a writing offer. If I hit next, this whole document is going to go to somebody that I don't remember who he is, and I think he'd be a little alarmed receiving it from me. So I'm not going to send it. It's going to freak him out. Yeah, exactly. And I don't know who Genine is, at least anymore. I mean, I do with so many practice runs in here that I have. Okay, any questions? We still have a few minutes. This is time for some good questions. You know, specific form, process. Commercial. Well, there's different forms. That's a whole different ballgame. Commercial is not residential whatsoever. Yeah.
Janine, if this is a circumstance, actually it's happening maybe today. I have a closing schedule for Tuesday, but there's a lien on the property from child support. We're trying to get the payoff amount from child DSHS. We're not sure if we can get it before closing. How do I extend closing out if we can't close on that date and I'm the listing agent?
Hold on just a second. I don't want this recorded because that might hold me around. How do I stop recording?